whole time that Drake was in the hospital, he couldn't talk, and people would come in and he would take his eyes and he would look up and he was telling us that he wanted to pray. And it was just amazing. But there would just be so many instances that you would just see God everywhere around him.
This is so priceless because they were there holding him. The water kept the body weight off of his neck and the parts that were hurt. If they had tried to lift him out of there, it could have shivered that and they couldn't have repaired it. But because they left him there, when they called the paramedics, they jumped in the water and put the bed up under him. Now, there was no stress on his neck whatsoever at that point, so that's why stuff was still intact when he got to Children's.
You know, from the time that you get injured, your body is trying to reconnect with the injured area. And the pathways that, if he's going to get strength back or mobility back, he's going to need to look at what he's trying to do and just think, this is what I want. And if it happens, keep trying to repeat the process.
Basically, you have to relearn everything when you have a spinal cord injury that high, because from that point below, it basically stops everything. So I had to learn how to use my fingers, how to move my arms, it's everything from that point below. How to breathe again, just learning how to use my diaphragm and everything like that.
And so there was one day that he was in there. I was just talking to him with the team. And as I was talking to him, evidently he made his foot move. And everybody saw it but me, because I was looking at Drake and he couldn't do it again. But that was a really encouraging sign that the nervous connections were being established and that the potential for movement of the lower extremities, that the potential for being able to walk was there.
After I awoke from surgery, I could already feel everything. I'd felt normal in my body, I just couldn't move. So once I could move my legs and got moving back in my fingers, my arms, I basically knew from then it would just take time.
Some of the things that I talked to him about was that there's all kinds of stuff that is positive. The fact that once he was injured, he was floated in the pool and able to be suspended in water was a huge positive. The fact that EMS got there as quickly as they did, got him stabilized. He had surgery as quickly as he did. These were all very positive things. But the biggest thing was Drake's attitude, his personality, his commitment to excellence, his commitment to life and to family, and seeing the number of people that came around and surrounded him. That's the hope that I encourage them to hang on.
Did you ever feel like that you didn't know if you'd make it?
Not really. I just always felt like I was going to be back to normal, like I was going to be okay. I had numerous dreams in the hospital where I was walking just fine, never had a trach, and I never felt like I'd be in a wheelchair.
So one thing that sticks out to me about Drake is his attitude through all of it. Teenage boys, when they get injured, they get pouty. They just do. That's just typically what they do. Drake never got pouty. He said, all right, this is what it is. We're going to work through this. And his family support and the support of the hometown was a huge factor for this family, I believe.
It definitely made a huge difference in my recovery, I think. Just knowing that everyone was rooting for me. Everyone was hoping that I'd make it. It was just a big deal.
The just general aura of the room was hopeful and having faith. This is also a family that I could actually speak about faith openly with because they accepted it and wanted my prayers for their patient and for Drake. I even prayed with Drake many times.
I had 2 different nurses tell me at one point, and at 2 different times, different days, totally different. And she just stopped and she said, God's here and he's asking me to pray with y'all. And so we just stopped and prayed. Well, then the second time, it was a nurse. And she stopped me and she said, I'm really not supposed to, be talking to you about stuff like this. She said, but God spoke to me and told me I had to give you a message. She said, but every time I walk in your room, she said, there's a light. She said, there's a light above Drake. She said, God's here the whole time.
What did you think when you learned about the extent of Drake's injury?
What did I think? I was just like, when I learned what had happened, actually, I think it's when I listened to that doctor, and I just believed it was going to be good. Beforehand, I never knew the depth of how much damage had been done. I wasn't told that at the beginning. So I don't know. I just think that when I saw him, I would just say, Drake, let's pray. Or he would tell me, Nana, let's pray. And we just kept the faith that God was going to make this happen. And he did. And he did. That's the best part.
It's always uncertain. Every kid is different. Every situation is different whenever the spinal cord is involved. And so it's hard to say in the beginning exactly what that kid's course is going to look like. And there's so many different factors that go into play with it. So with Drake, we really weren't sure. It seemed like it was going to be really bad. And for him, I think his recovery was a complete miracle. And we were really impressed with him.
When was it that you began to think that this is going to be, I guess, for better terms, a miraculous recovery?
Probably the first dance. He started doing a little shimmy with his shoulders, and then he kind of got that right hand kind of doing like this right here. And he started just kind of having a little more happy attitude about it, and he slowly started to get that feeling, that sensation and movement back. But when he started dancing, I was like, all right, this looks pretty good.
When Drake began to have feeling and his hands, or when he was able to move an arm just a small amount,
or he could feel them touching him.
It seemed like things just started happening every day. He did something that he couldn't do the day before, and then I began to believe. I began to, I could see that all of the prayers. It had to be all of the prayers. They were working. And I became a believer at that time that things would be okay.
God works in mysterious ways. I think it started from the beginning. Not only did I have a phenomenal neurosurgery team, but also physicians here in the ICU and nurses. The work that the neurosurgeons do, I believe, is from God. I feel like they were able to do the right procedure for Drake and do the best for him because of God. All of it's possible through God, I believe. The thing that I also noticed between a family that is accepting of prayers and accepting of some support like that, there's a difference in the patient outcomes, and they're significantly better in my experience whenever they have faith and they're praying constantly and painstakingly.
Has Drake's recovery surprised you?
In the sense that anything is possible, no. But the fact that he is standing, walking, breathing on his own, I don't think it's, in all truth, it's not short of a miracle.
What really stands out to me from Drake in the very beginning of this is his willingness to pray, or his wanting to pray when people came in the room from day one. And that gave me a lot of comfort because I knew he was focusing on talking to God and praying through this, which allowed me to do the same thing. And so to see him have that reaction with so many people that came into his room to see him, almost every one, that would be the first thing he would say when he could barely lift his arm, wanting them to grab his hand and pray with me. Will you pray with me? And all that stuff made a difference. God heard every one of those prayers. I really believe that.
Also, Sydney, big part of this. She was right by his side, and that was the best medicine in Nana's book that he could have had. She waited on him and did things and let Amber and Clint have a break, so to speak, and because somebody had to be with him 24/7. And she was just a little trooper to be a teenager. I mean, get real here. And I'm just like, I think she was just outstanding, the stuff that she has seen and done, and didn't bother her. If he's having a problem, she's taking care of it. I mean, she's like nurse. I was like, okay, she's got this. Don't worry about it. And of course, I would see that little gleam in his eye. So that made it even better. But she was a big part of this too, for sure.
I just wanted to be like more his like positivity. He was always positive with me whenever I had a rough time, and so I wanted to help him and be positive and always bring the good outlook on everything. Being right beside him whenever all this happened really made me have a whole different outlook on life. And every day, I just thank God that Drake is perfectly fine and gaining all of his strength back, and I got to meet his family and how close I am with everyone.
The faith of many, many, many people. There were people praying for Drake.
All over the world.
A lot of whom he knew, most of whom he probably doesn't know and will never know. But they were there.
Clint had a lot of people message him from everywhere. He had a lady message him from Australia. I have a young girl that I've become friends with from Japan, and I don't even know her, but she started messaging me, and she would tell me she would pray for me, and she would message me a lot every day, and it would just kind of keep you going. And she would just tell me she was thinking about us, and there's just so many people that would just message you that you don't even know, and it would just tell you that they're praying for you.
But make no mistake, God's number one. He was there from the beginning. Everything that happened, from her mother and dad being there when they're normally not there, to her being able to jump in the pool. Clint was going to go fishing that day. Everything kept happening and he couldn't go. So it was so many things that just lined up. Amber was in Conway, and that made her closer to Little Rock. I mean, it's just like God was in the middle of this, and things just kept happening and happening. He had it happen for a reason. And I really believe that with all my heart. God gets the credit, period.
First off, it began with, hey, this is what we have going on. This is where we're at. It progressed to, this is the plan. We're going to achieve this goal. And then once we achieve that goal, we're going to set another and another and another. And the communication that we kept was very much, hey, we're going to meet this goal. We're going to do it. All right, we had a setback. I remember one setback we had where he was having trouble breathing. All right, Drake, we're going to work through this. And then I talked to Mom. This is what we're going to need to do. This is the kind of care that we're going to have to start providing to help him get better. Then it was also a follow-up with Faith, like, hey, do y'all want to say a prayer today? Yeah, we'll say a prayer today. Drake, every time I left, or even when I came in, he's like, hey, you want to say a prayer with me? Yeah, I'll say a prayer with you, Drake.
I can't say to you that I knew it, but I know a man that can. That's the song. And I do know a man that can fix it, and he fixed it. Yeah, for sure.
It started with just a toe wiggle, and then he started moving his entire leg. I remember for a while he couldn't move his arm, if I remember right, and started moving his arm, sitting up in bed more, moving to the chair, working with PT and physical therapy, getting some of the basic body functions that we all take for granted back that, we weren't sure if he was going to be able to have again whenever he got those back. Just his body recovering and going back to how it was before his accident. So when I first saw Drake, he had a breathing tube and he was sedated. So he was basically a patient in a bed. He wasn't talking, he wasn't communicating. And then at the end we had him walking. I remember the day that he first moved his leg after his spinal cord injury, and we all celebrated, and that was how the end was. It was just a bunch of celebration in the beginning. Very scary, very uncertain, still very positive outlook for everybody, but the end was just happy and just relief and celebration. Just seeing him from when he couldn't move his legs to seeing him move his legs the next day. Just things where, there were facts he could not move, and then the next day he could move. And just his determination and personal strength and his support system really helped him get there.
I was blown away with the support that they received. I mean, from the first minute, there were people bringing meals up to the hospital. I mean, the whole time they were there, I'm sure they all gained weight. There was so much food. And they were giving food to the other families of the other patients there. Just everyone. And it's been like that from day one.
Yeah.
All of you ask where was the good in all of this? I mean, it had to be the community and the support.
It's breathtaking. It's amazing. I mean, from the beginning, we would have people that would we never had to do anything. I mean, my family and everybody every night they had us a meal at the hospital. We never had to want for anything. Every night, and my sister-in-law put together a meal train. There was a meal for us at the hospital every night. Whenever our community, it was just, I can't even, there's so much our community has done. It's just amazing. But they would, make sure they would call. It would just get endless phone calls of just, your school, your friends, your family, people you would know, but it's just, the outpour has just been, it's like there's so many people, you can't thank everybody, and you don't want to leave anybody out because so many people have done so much for us that it's just, I would get a phone call every day of something new that our community is doing to help us, and it's just, you just cry. You just cry.
One, faith. I have a tremendous amount of faith. Again, I said that there's a patient outcome difference when faith is involved. Two, allow your support system to love you. A lot of times it can be overwhelming. Like your child's in the hospital and then like all these people come out of the woodwork and they're like, hey, how can I help? It gets a little overwhelming, but allow them to love you. And that'll make the biggest difference. It'll help out so much.
And God was so good that they were able to stay with him from day one and still be able to pay their bills and be able, because of the community's help and support. And oh my, that is such a blessing, because most parents would not have got to do that. And that was just with them and Sydney. I mean, it was just a blessing, unbelievable. And God's right in the middle of it. Had to be.
Makes me feel like my job's worth it. Working with his family, oh man, I'm gonna get emotional. Working with his family made me want to come to work. There's times that when you come to work and it's like, man, I'm about to see something real sad today, but he made it change for me. He made it change in the way that like, I want to be with Drake today. I want to be with my bud and be with him and help him get better, because we became friends. I mean, with the family as well.
They were incredible. They were always excited to see you as their nurse. They were always communicating, expressing their wants, trying to get a feel of our wants. They supported us. Most of the time as the nurse, your job is to support the family, but they were very supportive of us and what we were trying to do. I felt like we always were communicating goals with each other, setting goals, evaluating where our goals were, re-evaluating goals. And that was very vital in his recovery. It was how involved they were in his care.
And then after a couple of weeks, well, then they just start kind of telling you, well, you're going to go up to the 5th floor for therapy. We thought we would stay here. And they just kind of made it sound like that you would just do all your therapy here. But you'd never been through any of this. You don't know what to expect. You don't know what to do. And so we just thought we would stay here. Well, the spinal cord doctor there approached us, and she was the one that told us about KKI. And she told us, she said, y'all really need to go. She said, that's where y'all need to be. She said, she said, Arkansas is about 15 years behind. And she said, that's where y'all need to be for therapy. She said, you have your best choice, your best shot there. So the doctor is the one that brought it to, she really suggested. And of course, at that point, my husband was already researching, going to, that the one in Atlanta, that Shepherd's, and there's one in California. He was already researching going to all kinds of different ones. We didn't even know about that one, but Children's is the one that suggested us go to that one, and we did all the research, and it was supposed to be the best in the country. Of course, whenever you get there, it's so scary. You're in like a state of shock because it's so different there, and you're just trying to take it minute by minute. But we just had to keep our head in the game as far as we knew we were there for therapy. And so we just had to just think about that every day. And I don't think any of us would have made it if we all three was not together. And then, of course, having Sydney there a lot. It was, if I'd have been there by myself, it would have been extremely hard.
Well, they left Little Rock, and I stayed home for probably a month, and then me and my dad drove up there, and we stayed for a week, and then I drove back. And the last time I went up there, I just couldn't leave him. I just wanted to stay for the rest of the time, and I really like seeing him progress in therapy, and I wanted to help push him and be by his side like I was in Children's. So I stayed. It was really hard leaving my parents because I'm kind of like a mommy's girl, and I never wanted to go so far away from them, but I knew if that was me, Drake would do it.
Once we really, I would say, get into his recovery phase at Baltimore, Drake was he just never had a down day. We had some setbacks, sure. There were some challenges that he had, but he was always just so positive, and every little task or plan they would have for him to do in therapy, or if it was from him trying to wean off the ventilator, I mean, that was the first huge goal, is to get off the vent, He was always so positive and so open to try stuff that he just really pushed through every little thing. And I knew once he started doing that stuff that, man, the sky really is the limit here. Drake is going to be a miracle. He's going to beat the odds because he was just recovering so much faster than they could really predict at that point.
The first week that I went to Baltimore, he couldn't sit up on his own or really I don't know, he just had a lot of dizziness whenever he sat up, and he could barely throw a beach ball. And by the end of that week, he was sitting up on his own, throwing a beach ball, and that just really showed me that he was really trying. And he always told me whenever I was there that he pushed harder, and that's the reason why I wanted to stay.
And every little challenge they gave him, I could see it every day of something different. And, we're talking from going from I can't move my hand to my fingertip barely moving. The next thing you know, he's opening and closing his hand, just things like that, and on into sitting up in the bed. And I remember the first time he sat up on his own, he was so excited. I had actually went down the hall, and when I came back, he had already done this for Amber. He had already wiggled around and sit up in his bed on his own, and he was so excited he couldn't wait to show me. And so he's laughing. He lays back down and giggling, so I have my phone recording him in that video, and he lifts back up, and he was just so excited. And I thought, it was just little things like that, just give you hope and just show you that, Drake is a fighter. His spirit and his faith is going to guide him right through this. And I think it really did. He stayed strong and just fought through every little step. And he's still fighting. I mean, he's still working to recover and get stronger, and he hasn't stopped. His determination can't be measured as far as I'm concerned. We're very thankful for each one of those milestones. And, I know, football and sports had been his life, leading up to this. It's his senior year. He had already been a starter on the football team and was really working hard to excel in his senior year. And to be looking so forward to all of that and then it not happen, it was, truly a big moment for us to make it home before the football season was over so he could, in any form, attend a game and be there with his teammates, because that meant a lot to Drake. But to have him be able to fly in on the helicopter on senior night and actually walk out in front of everybody at the football game, that's just unexplainable. It was such an emotional night. I was very proud of Drake that night, and just proud of our whole community of how they rallied around Drake and the support they showed us. And it was really something to see that.
It was just electric down on the field. It's just like it was just a different vibe down there than it was on a normal Friday night. It was just awesome. Just amazing knowing that, restaurants and the school and everyone can just come together like they have.
And the other things, making it to prom and the other things that he's got to do this year, we don't take that stuff for granted. You can get so hung up in the everyday life that you take a lot of those things for granted until something like this happens. And every moment is precious with your family. And Drake getting to experience these things, we certainly don't take that for granted. And, he's really blessed to be able to enjoy that.
Oh, it's definitely brought us closer. And just like Drake said, you just forget the little things. And then it's like when something like this happens, it brings everything back to perspective. Every little thing matters. And it's definitely brought our family closer to God.
I think Drake is just that kind of person, and just his spirit and his outgoingness. He's always been somebody that I've really believed would be a coach or a teacher, or have an impact on people's lives in some form or another. I do think that maybe that has shifted a little bit, maybe away from sports and into other roles. He's wanting to pursue physical therapy. He certainly brings insight to that, where he will be able to relate to people. But regardless of what Drake does or what he ends up doing, he's going to have a positive impact on people. That's just his personality. That's who Drake is. And he's going to have an effect on people forever. A lot of it will be from this injury, but a lot of that is just Drake. It's just this injury let everyone see his personality and, what he is capable of, especially overcoming. So I think Drake will be a blessing to a lot of people in his life. And I think he's going to continue to affect others. I really do.
Drake has a lot of faith, and I think he has brought a lot of people together, a lot of families together, and he has made me a lot closer to God. I think Drake is going to be absolutely amazing in life. I think he's going to help so many kids and so many families that will go through any accident like this. Drake is a really big inspiration just to anybody, not even going through an injury like that. If you just hear his story, you feel closer to God, and being right beside him whenever all this happened really made me have a whole different outlook on life.
Yeah, so my number one thing to say to folks watching this is definitely keep your faith. That, with God or through God, all things are possible. I think this incident with Drake really shows the power of prayer, how strong your faith can be, and not just in a single form, but community faith as well. I think all of that made a huge difference in Drake's outcome. So, you got to have faith to overcome adversity. in so many different forms. And I think it really shows up in this, just how strong our God is. And, through the power of prayer, I believe it really pulled Drake through this. I really do. God's hands were in this from the day of the accident, before the accident, to the day of the accident, and to now. And there are so many things that's hard to capture this in an interview setting. But it's clear if you took the time and you read everything to do with Drake's story, that God showed up all along the way. And that reassured Amber and I, and it kept Drake's spirit strong, and it helped him push through this, really a tragic accident that he could have been left paralyzed and on a ventilator. But having faith and, believing in God and praying and keeping that faith and being faithful to that really allowed Drake to overcome this. And I don't know how else to explain that other than to just give a whole testimony of, about this whole process. But that's really what it is. And, having faith and staying true to that can get you through a lot of things. And this should be inspiring to other people, or, hopefully would lead others to have faith, because you really can overcome anything if you have that faith and if you believe.
Don't take anything for granted. When I mean anything, I mean everything. From walking to being able to take a shower, brushing your teeth. You got to realize how precious everything is in your life. Being able to do what you can do. Just don't ever take that for granted.
But in the process of him getting a little bit better, and every time there was an obstacle with prayer and the church praying and the family praying, God always made what seemed to be the worst thing that he'd ever faced at the moment just another stepping stone. And every situation got a little bit, even with the diagnosis of the doctors, it got a little bit better, and it never was as bad as what they said it could have been. And not that it wasn't bad, but when God's in control of it, he's working a plan.